What's going on, Bucs fans? Welcome inside the 813, where we bring you two of our riders every single Thursday to break down the studs and duds, the X factors, and of course, you know we got to talk about Todd. I am your host, James Yarcho, editor-in-chief here at the 813, joined by my main man, Rock Riley, the boots on the ground there. And of course, check out all the content that we have for you here at the 813. Follow on Twitter at the 813 TV, at JYarcho_Bucks, and at Real Rock Riley. Rock, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Season is moving on. Bucks are 5-5, 500 team. Still plenty of season to go, though, James. Still plenty of season to go. We're in fall, so I'm good. I'm locked in for this episode.
Yeah, and I think when the schedule came out, you know, a lot of people had this team pegged as maybe 5-5, could be 4-6. It was a brutal start to the season, and they're in the midst of this really rough 5-week stretch where they have 3 primetime games over the course of like 5 or 6 weeks. You know, you're playing Atlanta twice. You have to face the Chiefs and the Ravens and the 49ers. And it's a brutal stretch, but then you get the bye week. Hopefully you get Mike Evans back, you know, the week after. And then you face one team that as of now, as we're recording this on October 30th, you have one team over 500 on that back half of the schedule. You get the Giants, you get the Panthers twice, you get the Saints, you know, it really eases up. So you're right. Lots of time left. I don't think they're in the running for the division anymore, Rock. I think falling 0-2 to Atlanta kind of takes them out of that running, but still in the hunt for a wild card. This is still a potentially playoff caliber team, but we got to look back at the loss to the Atlanta Falcons. We didn't know how things were going to go without Mike, without Chris. You know, what is Liam going to do on the offensive side of the ball? Who are going to be the targets? Is the defense going to look better than it did Thursday night in the first meeting against the Falcons? Spoiler alert, it didn't. But let's give some praise to some guys, right? There are some guys that went out there, played really well. Who is your stud for this week?
My stud for this week, and it really, he could be for the last couple of weeks, is tight end Cade Otton. I had heard from so many people that, you know what, he's a serviceable tight end. They got to do better. They got Culp in the draft, and maybe next year you go after a guy, man, that can stretch the field and block and this and that. Not only has he been consistent, he has been above consistent, and without Evans, without Godwin, and the coaches are telling me he does a lot in the blocking game that you're not even seeing. He had 2 more touchdowns in this game. One was that 97-yard drive when they really needed it. That cut the lead to 5. They were getting back in it. He had the 5-yard touchdown over the middle. I mean, he's taken. He knows he's going to get hit. It looks like at times he's going to be knocked out, and he's tough as nails and just good hands, getting open when they need a go-to receiver, and Baker Mayfield is looking to him. So for me, it's Cade Otton. He's my stud.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. Like he was penciled in as my stud, and you know there were a couple other guys that jumped out, but I mean back-to-back weeks that he's leading this team in receiving. He just got his first career 100-yard game against the Ravens last week. Then on National Tight Ends Day, he's like, I see you, Kyle Pitts. I can get in the end zone twice too. And unlike you, I don't have Antoine Winfield Jr. stripping the ball from me before I actually got my second touchdown. So, yeah, Cade Otton has been absolutely just phenomenal the last couple of weeks. And you know, one of the things that I noticed, at least early in the game, it seemed like at the same time they went away from the rushing attack that was working pretty well, they went away from Cade for a little while before they circled back and started to get him more involved again. But he kind of took that Chris Godwin role where he was the third down guy. He was the move the sticks dude that Baker knew he could trust to catch the ball and you know, extend the drive. So I love the utilization of Cade Otton. He has risen to the occasion. I wrote about him on the 813 yesterday when I was talking about, you know, what position players kind of elevated their performance and took up some of the slack without Mike and Chris. So I love that pick. My stud for this one is Rakim Jarrett. And he didn't have eye-popping numbers, right? 3 targets, 3 receptions, 58 yards, but he made some tough catches. And he was the second leading receiver on the team. I know that's kind of sad to say that the second leading receiver only had 58 yards, but I think when you think about him just coming back, this is a guy that's been out for quite a while. I think we're going to start gearing up to see him really become a bigger part of this offense. They're trying to get Jalen McMillan involved. And again, second week in a row, he had some nice plays. He had 4 receptions on 7 targets, and he's starting to get a little bit more involved. But I think Jarrett gives a little bit bigger body with a lot of speed on the outside, compared to Trey Palmer. So really going to start to see more Jarrett moving forward, but this being his first game in quite some time, I thought he performed really, really well.
Todd mentioned him in the post-game press conference, and he came in and it was down and a loss and this and that, but he was talking about exactly what you said. He only had like really 1 week of practice. What he was able to do, can you imagine as the season progresses? I think he's the name that we're going to hear more and more of on this show and a lot of shows. I thought Trey Palmer was going to take that next step. He has not. Jalen McMillan is playing like a rookie. I'm hoping he gets a little bit better, and I think he will. But Raheem Jarrett, and you're right, the size and everything, boy, they need it because we don't know, and even if Mike Evans does come back after the bye, he's not going to be like 100%, so you're going to need somebody. You can't keep feeding Cade Otton. So that's a good one, even only with the 3 catches. I'm in agreement with you, James. Good one.
Yeah, and beyond just the 3 catches, a couple of those were tough catches, and he was able to bring him in. Really loved what I saw out of him. Got to flip it over and talk about some of the not so studly guys. We're going to talk about some duds, and for me, this one's Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Bro, where was he? Where was he? Like, you and I were on the stat sheet as much as JTS was. 2 total pressures in this game. He has 1 game, and you and I have talked about PFF grades on this show. They're not the end-all, be-all, but they're a great tool to see if other eyeballs are seeing the same thing that your eyeballs are seeing. He has 1 game over the last 3 weeks where he's graded over a 55. His grade for this one was barely over a 53. He was nowhere. For a team that needs to generate pass rush to take some of the pressure off of these corners, off of, inexperienced guys like Tyreek Funderburk, Tyke Smith when he returns. That pass rush is not getting home. You can't just go into these games with Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and Yaya Diaby doing everything. JTS started off so well this season, and since then, straight Houdini, an absolute disappearing act, and it happened again against Atlanta. Kirk Cousins had all day to pick apart the defense like he did the first time around, and that's why I've maintained since probably June or July, JTS is not going to be on this team next year.
He shouldn't be starting at all. He really shouldn't. He was in on 69% of the plays, 39 snaps, 0. No tackles for loss, no quarterback hit, no pass breakup, nothing. That is hard to do. And what I see in practice, James, he goes the extra step. Like when they come out, the defensive players, D-line, edge rushers, they kind of mosey on over and they kind of just are talking around. He's working on footwork. He's doing bag work. So he can't do any more. And if he can't do any more, and this is what we're seeing, he's not going to all of a sudden just turn it on. So it's time to sit him down. And I'll maybe have more when we talk about Todd. But no, he's a dud, a double dud, a triple dud.
I mean, and at this point, put Braswell out there.
Yeah.
Give Braswell 69, 70, 71% of those snaps. And even if he's not producing, he's an even swap with JTS, right? Because JTS isn't producing either. But now, at least this way, you're getting your second round pick some experience. And you're starting to get him better acclimated to the workload, to developing, and all of those things. Because it's not like you're losing anything by pulling JTS off the field. Braswell has popped more with, and passed the eyeball test more often than JTS has this year. Even if he's not putting up sacks, even if he's not, getting quarterback hits, at least you can see, okay, all right, I see it there. Quarterback got the ball out of his hand a little bit quicker, but you see the growth week by week. With JTS, it's stagnant and it's not going to change. But Rock, you take a look at this game. Who jumped out at you as kind of the dud in this one?
Tyreek Funderburk.
Mm-hmm.
And this was his chance. Now, early in the game, he did have a pass breakup in the end zone. I was like, oh, all
Yeah.
right. But then he had a missed tackle on Kyle Pitts. Also, he blew it on the Mooney touchdown. He It was pretty obvious. They pulled him. They pulled him. They tried Josh Hayes. You were getting your chance, Tyreek. It is, I don't know if you're ever going to get a chance again, but with that injury, you can't miss tackles. You can't get burned like that. Basically, that kind of cost them the game. He wasn't the only one, but I mean, if he made two of those plays, they might have had a shot because it did come down to the Hail Mary. So Funderburk was my dud, and there were several, but he's mine.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. And I was kind of like you. I saw that pass breakup and I'm like, okay, all right, here we go. And then from then on, it was just downhill. Rock, I'm going to throw out a bonus dud. I know I
Okay.
didn't prepare you for this, but I
Yeah.
got a bonus dud. It's the NFL. The NFL gets a big fat dud in this one. How is it for a league that has enough money to install cameras along every single foot of every football field, we don't have a pylon cam to overrule a touchdown for what was clearly a fumble? And I mean, and you can even go so far as to say you didn't need the goal line cam. Conventional wisdom tells you Kyle Pitts' leg hadn't crossed the goal line. The ball was behind the leg and it came out. That's a fumble, but would have been nice to have that camera angle. We have pylon cams that are attached to first down chains now. How is there not one on the goal line for that play for a replay review? Big fat L for the NFL on that one.
There's a sports reporter that also shot the sideline. He shot the whole game. Sean Barry from Fox 13 in Tampa. And he's the one. He put it out and it went viral. You could see it. I was in the locker room this week and they were showing it. And it was on Pat McAfee. It was on ESPN. It's Sean Barry. It's Sean Barry. And he's not a videographer. He is a on-air sports reporter, one-man band, and they bring in all these trucks. There must be 7 trucks. When Amazon Prime on Thursday night, there's about 12 trucks with hundreds of employees, hundreds and hundreds of cameras. How do you not in 2024? Yes, 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 yes. I think you will now. I think you are going to see a pylon camera. Guaranteed, James.
Yeah, imagine if that had happened to the Kansas City Chiefs. The world would have imploded. But anyway, yeah, I had to throw that out there. But Rock, we got to talk about Todd. And there's a lot of things about Todd that we can talk about. But I've said my piece over on my other show. So I want to start by getting your opinion. How hot do you think Todd Bowles' seat is right now when you take a look at this football team and you have an offense that's in the top 5 in most offensive categories? At the very least, they're top 10 across the board. Then you take a look at a defense run by a defensive guru, a defensive genius, a defensive-minded head coach, and they are in the bottom 25% in every major metric: run defense, pass defense, total defense, points allowed, bottom 25% in the league. And so you have a top 5 offense in the NFL that's losing games because the defense can't hold the opposing team to under 28 points. How hot's that seat, man?
It is warm. I bet you I know how I want to hear you on the back end, James. I'm trying to give Todd Bowles a little bit more time, and it's very hard to do so because he is known as a defensive mastermind. To go from that to probably the worst defense in the NFL with an Antoine Winfield Jr., with a Levante David, who is looking a little bit slower, with the Vita Vea, with the Kalijah Cansey. These are talented guys. These are pro bowlers. It should not be miscommunication week after week. They're getting burned. They're missing tackles. Who's covering who? Wide open over the middle, and it's happening over and over again. He's also being stubborn. He keeps staying with KJ Britt. It isn't getting any better. So and the Glazers they want to win. I know this. I have talked to Joel Glazier one-on-one. Man, do they want to win. And they're also business people. They know, they follow, they watch. Wow, there was empty seats in this Atlanta game. And Atlanta doesn't really travel that well. You would think they do, but they didn't. There was a lot of empty seats. It's early. They're 4-3. It isn't like this team is only Carolina won one game. And they know, they see that a lot of fans don't like Todd. It is a fact. So if you got that and the team continues to lose and it's bad business, then I don't know how he's going to survive. But for me, where we are right now, James, I say it's pretty warm, but it's not smoking hot yet. For me, at 4-4 with plenty of season to go. How do you see Todd right now, that seat?
I'm with you. And I am a firm believer that, the Glazers have never fired a head coach in season, and I don't think they're going to start now. I don't think it's going to happen. Even if the Bucs lose the next two games, they go into the bye at 4-6. You could say, okay, well, now you have the bye week. You fire Todd. Liam takes over as the interim, and see if you can get this thing on track. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think the Bucs are still going to end up above 500 when all is said and done because of the ease of that schedule. Now, if you go out there and you lose to the Panthers, or you lose to the Giants, you lose to, the Raiders, okay, now we're talking about that seat starting to smoke. But I go back to the hiring of Liam Cohen, and I think about kind of the series of events that have occurred. Todd has mentioned that he felt like he was getting towards the end of his coaching career, that he probably wasn't going to be around too much longer. And I honestly feel, and I have no insight, I have no source telling me this. My gut feeling when they hired Liam Cohen was, this is our next head coach. We're locking him up as offensive coordinator. We have a team that can compete, but this is the guy that we want to take over when Todd moves on. I think now it's becoming a situation where this is the guy that's going to take over when we move Todd on. And it's going to be one of those things where they're probably going to tell him, look, you can say that you're ready to retire and move on. And it's not going to be that you're fired. But I always felt that Cohen was the head coach in waiting. And maybe that timeline got sped up a little bit because of the poor play of the defense, because of now the injuries to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And who knows, Rock? I mean, they could shock everybody. They could get hot on the back end of that schedule, and all of a sudden they're in the divisional round again. How do you move on from a coach that ends up getting back into the divisional round, depending on how competitive that game is? Maybe they even sneak into the NFC Championship and we see the return of Chris Godwin. He talked about at his charity event that if everything goes right, he might be able to come back depending on if the Bucs are still in the playoffs or not. So, yeah, I feel like if he doesn't get these things turned around, it's going to be a situation where Todd Bowles will not be the head coach in 2025. And you mentioned being stubborn and sticking with KJ Britt. And I've heard a couple of other people say, it's not the scheme. It's the personnel. It's the players. Well, who picked the players? You picked them because they fit your scheme, because they fit your defense. And I also seem to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, when Todd Bowles was hired, didn't he say that his scheme is his players? So how do you have, this dissociation between the two. And you're 100% right. If I hear him say that there was miscommunication one more time, I'm going to run headfirst into a wall, because all it does is remind me of Jameis. That's all it does. How many press conferences were there after games where Jameis threw an interception in the fourth quarter, and then he gets up in front of the media and he goes, I got to be better. Okay,
Right.
then be better. If there's miscommunication, fix it.
Now, I am going to disagree with you, James, on your point where when they hired Liam Cohen, they kind of were looking at he could be our next head coach. I honestly think it was because he was coming from the Rams. He did have somewhat of a short, but a relationship with Baker Mayfield. They were going to set him up with Baker Mayfield. But I don't think it was so much of a slam dunk that he was Kentucky. That's still college. Yes, it's the SEC. He doesn't have an extensive record as being an offensive coordinator, especially in the NFL. So look, when Canales got the job, it was Kyle Trask. They did not have Baker Mayfield. They went through a lot of candidates, and it was like, and we sat in a room, and they were like, no microphones, don't write anything down. Canales wants to meet you guys, and I was like, why did you take this gig? You have Kyle Trask and nobody else. You have no money to spend. It's after the go. And he was like, these jobs don't come about. That's why I take it. Okay, so now he gets that gig. Unbelievable in 1 year. 1 year. That's Carolina's problem. And Liam Cohen, he had a lot of upside, but I don't know if they were that confident that he is going to be the next head coach of our NFL team. But where we are now, James, players really like him. He shows that he can make adjustments. When he talks to you, when he talks to the media, he explains. It isn't like we don't know anything and he's better than all us. Players love him. So, and he's young and he's a people guy. So, no, where we are now, it does look like, boy, if we're going to blow out balls, we keep Liam Cohen. Baker's here. Now, this was being talked about in the press box at Raymond James Stadium. It was halftime, and we were starting to always discuss this. And like, well, look at what happened with Dirk Cutter. They gave him the head coaching job. How did that turn out? I think Dirk Cutter is different than Liam Cohen. Dirk Cutter was a good college offensive guy, pretty good in the NFL, but as a head coach, it just wasn't there. So I think Liam Cohen is a little bit higher up, maybe at this level than a Dirk Cutter as far as projecting him to be a head coach. So I think where we are now, I'm right with you. But when they hired him, James, I'm not with you. I don't think they thought he was going to be the head coach at that point, James.
Yeah, and that's 100% fair. It really, really is. And I don't know if Liam gets the head coaching gig, like we're starting to believe that he probably will. One way, whether Todd decides to retire or they decide to move on, as long as he doesn't make the same big mistake that Dirk Cutter made, and that was the hiring of the defensive coordinator. Because right now, this defense looks like a Mike Smith defense, and that was really what hurt Cutter. And it goes back. It's the loyalty. Sometimes loyalty can bite you in the butt. Sometimes it's great. And you see what happens in 2020, when you're loyal to people that you've worked with in the past and you've really grown with. But sometimes loyalty gets you fired like it did for Dirk Cutter. So, I'm with you that I think Liam Cohen is probably a better candidate to become a head coach than Dirk Cutter was when it happened. And the proof is in the pudding. We're talking about a top 5 offense in the NFL on pace to break, Tom Brady era offensive records set by this franchise. Baker Mayfield on pace to break Tom Brady's single season touchdown record, for this franchise. So,
His first year too. Liam Cohen's first year.
Yeah.
First year here, first year being OC in the NFL. That does say something. No, It's phenomenal. And even I was talking with Graham Barton. Graham Barton, the rookie, he's like, look, I know we don't have Mike. I know we don't have Godwin, but we're very confident that we can move the football up and down the field. And Baker said, I thought we still were moving it pretty good, even with what they got right now. So no, Cohen is doing a great job, and Todd is doing a terrible job. Terrible job. Terrible job.
Well, there is a game coming up on Monday in the house that Taylor Swift built, and the Bucs have to take on the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. I've had this one marked as a loss since the schedule came out. Stranger things have happened. The Browns just beat the Ravens. You know, it's the NFL, baby. Any given Sunday or Monday. So when you take a look at this matchup, what is your X factor in this one? If the Bucs are going to somehow find a way to upset the Chiefs in Arrowhead, what's your biggest X factor?
Well, just don't let Mahomes go off. Do what you did. What they did in the Super Bowl was that was incredible. Wasn't that, James?
It was a
Wasn't
work
it?
of art.
It really was. And Todd, you were the mastermind. So, and you got some good players now. You can't have miscommunication, okay? You can't have the missed tackles. Baker said it. We know what we're going to get. That's a tough environment. And on Monday night, try to make sure you contain Kelsey. Kelsey had not had a good year until last week's game. He went off. They got DeAndre Hopkins, but he had just gotten there, and they said they're going to use him a little bit more. But overall, the Chiefs have not been world beaters. Yes, they're undefeated. So don't let Mahomes go off. I'm not asking for a Super Bowl performance. And that's easier said than done. Don't get caught up in the environment either. If you get down and it's going to be loud and it's going to look like everything is closing in, you have one of the coaches that's a fantastic coach in making changes and trying to out scheme. Andy Reid is good. He's probably the best, I would say, in the NFL. So it's going to be a tough task. Just don't get too caught up in all the hype. And it's on Monday Night Football. Play your game. Be solid. The offense is going to move the chains, but it's the defense. The defense hasn't been able to stop anybody. It's going to start with the defense. That's it. Don't make mistakes. Stop it with the miscommunication. How about you, James?
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. Don't let Patrick Mahomes look like Kirk Cousins. There's a sentence I never thought I would say, but yeah, you're right. They can't get caught up in things. They can't let Mahomes and Kelsey look like the Mahomes and Kelsey of old, because that duo wasn't really all that great last year either. But you have a great tight end against a bad defense against the tight end. You have speed everywhere. Xavier Worthy, fast. Kareem Hunt, fast. Like speed everywhere. Then an additional week now for DeAndre Hopkins to get used to things. That's going to be a problem. It's going to be so tough. It really, really is. But my X factor for this one, I'm just rewinding from last week. It's the running backs. I cannot believe, for as much praise as we just heaped all over Liam Cohen, how do you have the first three drives of this game? And I know the first one ended in a fumble. It was a phenomenal peanut punch. It was a great defensive play. Defensive players get paid too. It was a great play. But over the first three drives for the Buccaneers, 70 rushing yards. You had scoring drives of 15 plays and 12 plays on the backs of your running backs. Rachaad White and Bucky Irving were doing a phenomenal job. 32 rushing yards the rest of the game. Why? Why'd you go away from it? You go back to the week before, facing the number one rushing defense in the NFL in Baltimore. Coming into that game, they were allowing 59 rushing yards per game. The Bucs had passed that by the beginning of the second quarter. Now you're going up against the league's second best run defense. Who cares? This run game has been light years better than it was earlier in the season now that the starting offensive line is back together. That's no coincidence. As soon as those five were back together, Rachaad was more effective. Bucky was more effective. Tucker was more effective. Stick with it. The only chance you have in this game is that you jam the ball down their throats and control the clock. Keep your own defense on the sideline for as long as humanly possible. And the way to do that is not throwing jump balls to Ryan Miller. It's not trying to force passes into double coverage to Jalen McMillan. It's you turn around, you give the ball to Rashad, you give the ball to Bucky, you give the ball to Tucker. Simple as that. Don't get away from it when it's working. Stick with the run, perfect. And you might be surprised what you find.
You know what? That's perfect. That is perfect. Pound it. Time of possession. That would be the way to do it. Now, Bowles was asked that on Monday. I think it was Monday, and he was like, "Well, we got away with it. We got away from it because we were having to play catch up." But I know Sammer on the 813 had broken it down, and it wasn't necessarily like they were there was a time where it was getting close. They could have actually run the football more. They didn't have to just constantly be throwing it. And when the opposing defense knows that, you're screwed. So I don't know. I don't know why they kind of went away from it. And we talked to Bucky on Monday, and it was on a Zoom, and he's like, because he's got a toe injury, and it's not a turf toe. He had this since college. He's dealt with this. He knows how to go about the treatment. So it wasn't like he was hurting, and that's the reason. And I thought we should have seen a little bit more Sean Tucker, too, as well. Use this three-headed monster. They got it. And you're right. The offensive line, talked to Cody Mock, like I said, Barton, they're feeling it. The more they play, the more cohesive they are. They're moving it. They're moving it down the field. So, toe to pill, as they say, James, that's what they should do. Pound the rack a little bit more. I like it, James. I like it.
Yeah, well, and to your point, it's not like they were down 3 scores and you have to get away from it. We're talking tie game or down 1 score. You can keep running the ball at that point. And I saw Todd also mention, that Atlanta had done some things defensively that caused them to get away from the run game. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, because you're talking about one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. You can't tell me that all of a sudden it clicked and they finally figured out how to defend the run. That didn't make any sense to me. So yeah, pound the rock, control the clock, keep your defense off the field as much as possible, because it's going to be real hard for Mahomes and Kelsey and D-Hop and Kareem to score points when they're not on the field. Have a couple more of these 12, 15 play, 7-8 minute long drives that end in points, and you give yourself a puncher's chance. And that's all you can really ask for. Give yourself a chance, especially at the end of the game, like we saw last time, that you could pull off an upset. But Rock, that's going to do it for this week. Again, check out all the content and shows available right here at the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at the 813TV, at JArco_Bucks, at Real Rock Riley. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, and we want to thank you for taking a trip with us inside the 813.